Hey, beautiful people. This episode we're going to talk about, are innovation companies more profitable? So since the answer to are innovation companies more profitable is yes, resoundingly yes, and more profitable over a longer period of time, I'm really going to answer the question called why are innovative companies more profitable? We're going to look at how innovation drives sustainable profits, the three levels of innovation capacity and their impact on revenue, and how diverse teams lead to better market outcomes. What makes innovation superstars achieve 90% innovation capacity? There's a surprising and exciting link between gender balanced teams and market success. And we're going to look at how trust-based practices drive bottom line results. By the end of this video, I want you to be able to understand and talk about the direct connection between innovation capacity, innovation practices, and profit. In my book, The Innovation Mindset, which is a proven method to fuel performance and results, I talk about the innovation maturity model. As part of the prep and work for this book, I looked at innovation capacity and levels of innovation capacity. And what I discovered is that there is a growth ladder that people go through, kind of, you would expect that people go through as they build their innovation capacity inside organizations. But I also discovered that there's an interesting correlation between their innovation capacity and their growth opportunities and their market share. So at the bottom of the ladder, we have the people who are beginning innovation. So they are mostly struggling to kind of stand up their innovation capacity. Their innovation capacity would be anywhere from kind of 10 to 30% of what's really possible. And they have a basic roadmap and basic capability in their teams. Now that's pretty typical of a small company that is on a relatively slow growth curve, and they're just beginning to kind of assemble their team, and they're beginning to look at how do they set themselves up for sustainable growth, and they're considering innovation as a key to being able to do that, which is smart of them. But they are the beginning innovation people. The functional innovation processes, the people who have functional innovation processes, they're usually the ones who are getting products to market on a fairly recurrent basis. What they're also doing is they're building out strong partnerships across their supply chain and strong partnerships across their ecosystem. So they're more established, they've built more innovation capacity, they're using innovation as an engine for their growth, and they're clear on where it is they're going and how they're going about doing that. People who have robust innovation processes, they're kind of at a 70% innovation capacity rating, and what they're doing is they've got committed partnerships across the whole ecosystem, so they're pretty well established. Now here's the thing to remember: the amount of time a company's been around and how established they are is not necessarily an indicator of their innovation capacity. In fact, sometimes the more established companies who are growing, but they could actually be growing and worried about their long-term growth, they can sometimes have a dwindling innovation capacity. So don't correlate them linearly, because it's not a linear correlation. The innovation superstars are the people, regardless of what size of company they're in, they have developed and honed their innovation capacity to the point where they're operating pretty much at the max. And what they're doing there is they are changing the game. And once they get a reputation for being global game changers, they also get to pick and choose the best talent that they want to have. So that would have been, Google in the early days of their huge success. And they've struggled to maintain that, which is difficult to maintain over the lifetime of the company. So again, there isn't a direct correlation between innovation capacity and size of company. So I have a question for you as you start thinking about this. If you're in a position where you are guiding your team or your company towards being more innovative, are you willing to take a risk that might risk your profitability but increase your innovation capacity? Or are you more interested in maintaining your innovation capacity, which might be low, taking less risk, and just maintaining status quo with your profits? So as you start thinking about this, what you can see is those decisions and those trade-offs are part of what makes an innovative company more profitable. So let me know what you think about this in the comments and let's get the conversation started. I'm really interested to know how you think about this and how you practice this. I've written another book called 100% Capacity, The End of Gender Balance as We Know It. And I did a lot of study. Actually, the book came because I started to realize that gender balance teams were actually more innovative. And I was wondering whether or not I was biased in terms of what I was seeing. But I went out and I looked at the data and did a bunch of research over a long period of time. But what I discovered is that gender balance teams are actually more innovative. And so there's a diversity advantage in here. There's a gender balance advantage in here that is really worth looking at. Let me just give you some of the data. Gender balance teams are 76 more likely to get innovative ideas to market. They're 70% more successful in capturing new markets. And they're 27% higher likelihood of creating longer term customer value. So that's obviously across the board. But what's interesting for me about that is what it points to is our ability to be able to listen effectively to each other. And one of the things that we look at, that I've looked at when I look at a company's innovation capacity, is I look at their ability to be able to listen to disparate offers and disparate thoughts. And here's why. I was at a session a couple of years ago in Singapore, and the head of a global think tank on customer engagement and customer loyalty gave an incredible presentation, beautifully done, great slides, absolutely amazing. And he was talking about trust in the consumer goods market. And I was particularly interested because trust is absolutely a cornerstone of our ability to build our innovation capacity. So it was interesting for me. And he gave this incredible presentation, big applause. But I was left very confused at the end of the session because 85% of consumer goods decisions are made by women, and consumer goods are primarily purchased by women. So I said to him, without meaning to be disruptive in any way, I said, hey, so when you looked at women versus men in terms of building trust for consumer goods brands, what did that show you? And he was genuinely confused by what I said. And I said, well, you know, women make 85% of consumer goods purchasing decisions, and that has a big implication for building trust, for who these companies are building trust with. And he sort of shuffled around a little bit and he said, we didn't actually gather that data. So what I thought was super interesting about that was we had a data point that said 85% of consumer purchasing decisions are made by women. And yet we never factored any of that into how companies build trust. So that was one of the things that sort of tipped me off to the idea that there were a lot of other things that we weren't looking at as well in terms of how gender balance teams actually drive and create innovation. So somewhere in that process for that company, I guarantee you there was some young woman at the back of the room that said, hey, you know, 85% of consumer purchasing decisions are made by women, and she couldn't be heard. So the idea that listening and diversity of thought and ability to be able to listen to that is absolutely critical for a company as they seek to build trust with their customer base, as they seek to add value to their customer base, as they seek to have studies and surveys be relevant and make sense for people. That's absolutely a critical part of their innovation process. On the note of trust, there's a connection between trust and profit, and we kind of already really know this, but the data in here is actually pretty cool. Companies that build trust through innovation practices see better decisions 78% of the time, 24% fewer governance controversies, and 2 additional EBITDA points. So that has a big impact in terms of our ability to be able to leverage innovation for growth. So when we think about why are innovative companies more profitable, what we can see is that the work that companies have to go through to be more innovative de facto sets them up to be more profitable. They build better trust with their customers. They build better trust with each other. They listen more carefully to their customers because they're listening to the diverse perspectives of all of their employees. And so over time, what happens is they can do those things in terms of engagement with their customer base, and they can also be more innovative because those same practices are absolutely essential for building innovation capacity. Over time, what we see is that the companies that focus on innovation and build innovation capacity as a practice are also the companies that build sustainable innovation capacity and build deeper customer relationships and have stronger market presence and are more profitable. If you like this, if this makes sense for you, if you're embarking on an innovation capacity building journey, I strongly recommend that you also look at my video called How to Be More Innovative. It will give you even more insight into how to build your innovation capacity and how to think about it in terms of innovation practices. This is an amazing journey to go on. I wish you the absolute best of luck with it. I'm here to support you however I can. Take care and good luck.